All right. Well, hey, Dr. Chris Shade, psyched to have you back on the show for round two here, and perfect timing. I've been getting inundated with questions about how the heck to optimize the immune
Right.
system. And when I'm getting these questions, it's easy for me to say, go get some vitamin C and do this and do that. But you're the man creating these products, creating these formulas that knows these things inside and out better than anybody else that I know. So thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. Happy to be here again, Joe.
Yeah, man. And one of the things that I've been thinking about is this idea of optimization versus maximization. And it's this idea that I've talked about a lot as it relates to fitness. So if you want to run 100 miles, that's great, but you might have to eat a little bit more sugar than you would prefer to eat if you wanted to live forever. This sort of like balance. And when it comes to the immune system specifically, I think we're always looking to optimize the immune system, right? But I think right now, the questions I'm getting are more, how do I maximize? How do I dedicate as many resources as possible to maximizing my immune system? Because there's a lot of scary stuff happening right now.
Right.
And what I thought might be really cool is to take sort of three different people. So I've got in my head this sort of 38-year-old standard American. This guy just went to In-N-Out Burger. He's probably got two risk factors for heart disease. Maybe he's overweight. Then I've got person
Right.
B, which I'm looking at as like my mother.
Right.
She looks healthy, eats healthy. We don't really have a recent blood panel on her, but she looks healthy, but she's about 65 years old. And then
Right.
I've got me. Then I've got a guy that's got an infrared sauna and all sorts of things. And I would love for you to help us kind of dive into where do the priorities need to be for these types of people. Is that cool?
Yeah, no, that's a good way to go because, different people are going to go into different depths and there is always a balance, especially for like the athletes, if you overtrain right now, I don't care how much stuff I give you, you're going to be in trouble. And so everybody has to sort of go the distance that they can go.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. And I think that it's so easy to like hop online and start reading about product A, B, and C. And there's a lot of products out there and every one of them sounds really cool, but depending on which kind of demographic you want,
Right.
it might be one that's better for you right now or maybe worse for you right now.
Yep.
So yeah, let's dive in, man. Can we start with just the standard American? And I think a lot of my listeners, they're probably more of the biohacker, but they've got a parent or
Yeah.
a significant other that's closer to this standard American, this
Right.
38 or 40-year-old that's paying it a little bit of attention, but not maybe as much as they should. So what does this person need to do right now to maximize their immune potential?
All right. Yeah, as we get into this, we're going to cover a couple of different things. Some are just, all right, here's your basic supplements. Some are, here's some lifestyle factors. But one of the most important things to get out on the table right now, because there's controversy around it, is the use of vitamin D. There's our vitamin D3, K2. And, and what it really means during one for prevention, but two for when you've actually have something happen to you, if you get some sort of infection, how do you have your body optimized to deal with that? So there's a fear right now of supplementing vitamin D because of, in the COVID world, because of a route that the virus enters. And so there's something called the renin-angiotensin system. This is a way you control blood pressure, and it originates in the kidneys with release of something called renin that turns into angiotensin 1, then turns into angiotensin 2. And it's got, that whole system has a gas pedal and a brake. And the gas pedal is called ACE, angiotensin converting enzyme. And that like sort of revs up this system and kind of it raises blood pressure, and it does it for various reasons, but then it has a brake on it called ACE2, angiotensin converting enzyme 2. And ACE2 is essential for controlling inflammation, especially in people who have a lot of risk factors like hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, lung problems. They all have a deficiency of ACE2. And this is where supplementation of vitamin D helps that system. It supports that system. In fact, most of the things that we talk about for immune support, like vitamin A and vitamin D and vitamin C, all help this ACE2. Now, here's the rub. ACE2 is where the coronavirus enters the cell. And so you've got all these people panicked that if they support ACE2, they'll be helping the coronavirus come into the cell. But it's not like ACE2 doesn't exist unless you supplement. It's the supplementation is more around the whole system and getting balance between the yin and yang and a balanced inflammatory response. All the people that are getting really sick, it's from a runaway inflammatory response. And so we want to support immune and we want to support both sides of it. And so people get stuck in this, is it pro-immune or is it immune suppressing? Now the good things are sort of amphoteric. They do both. They're like adaptogens. They'll turn up your inflammatory defense and they'll turn up your inflammatory control. So all inflammation has two aspects, a pro-inflammatory and a counter-inflammatory, and they're balanced like that. In fact, all the cytokines you release, there's pro-inflammatory ones and there's counter-inflammatory controlling ones, and that's what you need, is a balance to the whole system. So first, there's a fear of supplementing vitamin D because, oh my God, now all the virus is going to get in, but it's actually what's going to put together and harmonize these two wings of your inflammatory system. And it is the thing that is the most deficient in the standard American diet, the standard American. So number one is supplementation of vitamin D. One, to get your primary immune system working against invaders, and two, it's to have the proper response if you do have something come in and you need to, your body needs to get rid of it. And again, the damage in all illness is from really runaway inflammatory responses, especially in viral type of situations. All right, so vitamin D is the number one thing that you can take, but then there's sort of a family of things. So there's vitamin D, there's vitamin A, and vitamin C, and then you've got auxiliary fat solubles, vitamin K and vitamin E. But A and D and C are the most important, and the K and E kind of balance those out. And if you're really boosting the immune system, you're going to be taking really high doses in the beginning. So for D, at least 10,000 IUs a day, but you can go 25, even 50 for a couple of days, and you're not going to OD. You're just going to top up the gas tank. And so this is what we've been doing with people around here. I mean, we're trying to run a business right now. We are an essential business. Boulder County here is on lockdown starting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., but other parts are already on lockdown. And so we have all of our staff that's working, supplementing these vitamins to keep their immune systems up. And I have 75 people. These are not all biohackers. Some of them are supplement junkies. Some of them are triathletes and stuff. But there's a lot of just normal people here. But everybody is taking these things. And in fact, we made an immune shot with C, where that'll be out soon, where we use C, elderberry, D, A, K, and E. So elderberry is another one. This one's really real well known, especially for upper respiratory issues, elderberry is. So those are the things that you can take. And just so you know, the other things that we did around here, we broke our shifts that work in bottling and shipping. This is the most essential functions right now. We broke them in two, and we never have one shift see the other shift. So one shift works for 4 days and the other shift works for 3 days, 10 and 12 hour splits, so that if one person gets sick on one of these, they're all going to have to go into quarantine. We still have another team going. So you go into these like wartime, like, sensitive factors, make sure, the president and the vice president aren't together at any one time. And we have these huge industrial ozonators. Then we ozonate the space in between each shift. So we're supporting people on the inside. We're not letting people contact each other too much. And we're supporting, and on the outside, we're sterilizing everything. All right, so back to your standard American person, they have those amounts. So D, we said 10,000 IUs a day. Usually 5 a day is what people go with for a good amount, but top it up for a while. If you haven't been supplementing, go to 25 a day for, a week or so. If you want to do 50 for 3 days and then drop to 10, these are ways to get that up. Vitamin A, 25,000 IU. If what doctors do when somebody's getting sick, they'll have you do 50 to 75,000 IU of A for like 3 days to prime the system, and they'll be doing like 25 to 50,000 IU. I was on with Todd Lepine last night. He does 25 to 50 whenever people are in acute situations, and Mark Houston does 100,000. And back when kids were getting rickets, they used to start by dosing with 300,000. So for short term, these high doses are not dangerous. They're fine. Long term, you're going to start running into issues if you're dosing long term like that. So back to the the A, short term, 25,000 a day, even for 3 days, 50 to 75, and then dropping down. Once you've been up there for a while, drop down to 10,000 a day and keep that rolling like that. C, at least 2 grams a day. Now the upper limit on C is like till you have diarrhea. So as far as you want to go with C, and if you're not feeling good, then you should dose it every hour. Okay. And just blanket yourself in C and just keep that running through all the time. E, I use tocotrienol. That's the best form of vitamin E, and we're using 50 to 100 milligrams a day, though. People will use that for acute things, and they'll run up to 300, 400 milligrams a day. Wow. But we're keeping on a smaller end there. K, you're using that to balance the D. For every 10,000 units of D, you should do 1 milligram of K1 or 100 milligrams of K2. In that immune shot, we do 1 milligram of K1 or 100 micrograms of K2. You wouldn't be able to afford 100 milligrams, so you wouldn't end up taking that. You would find that out real quick. We do 10 micrograms of 50 micrograms of K2 and 1 milligram of K1 in the shot with 10,000 IUs of D. So those are the basics there. Elderberry, they come in the standardized extracts. There's a 7% OPC and a 14% OPC. You're usually doing 100 milligrams of that per day. Got it. So that is how you go about you're just supplementing just about anybody. And then we can look a little bit more deeper into some of these other groups.
Yeah. So thank you for that overview. Now, the vitamin A, is this in the form of retinol? Because I know that there's couple of different types of vitamin A, and it's also interesting, just anecdotally, looking at like the Wise Traditions protocol for pregnancy is 20K IU of vitamin A per day.
And for the whole pregnancy.
Yeah. That's
wow.
That. So I thought it was just interesting that you were right around that same mark.
Is that Nourishing Traditions? Is that Sally Fallon?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome. I'm glad she uses so much. And so, you see they're running through a whole pregnancy at 20. All right. And, I think, the FDA settled around 10, but if you're doing 20 for months at a time, you're still fine. Yeah. It's just, eventually you want to bring that down a little bit. While you're growing a baby, you're putting a lot of stuff in there. One other thing I want to mention is glutathione, but that'll come up more when, because this is really big for keeping your immune system up and for keeping it controlled for that runaway inflammation. That sort of the cytokine balance goes askew when you don't have enough glutathione around.
Right. So that new shot that you just created, that sounds like this is like the ultimate insurance policy. It sounds like for
Yeah.
anybody that's sort of not
Yep.
really knowing where their immune system might be at. And maybe they kind of are erring on the side of caution and they want that sort of, what's that, like 1-2 punch. Now, is that a liposomal, like leave it
Yeah.
under the tongue or in the mouth for a minute?
Yeah, it is. So we've got a liposome, which is a water core of vitamin C with elderberry, and then we put in nanoemulsion of the fat soluble vitamin. So they're all in there together. Hold it in your mouth for a while, then swallow it. Hopefully, this is on an empty stomach. We have racks of these in manufacturing, bottling, and shipping, and everybody is instructed to take one of these per day to keep the troops up and rolling. And it actually tastes really good. So it's like, finally we have something that's just tastes good and is good.
Yeah, well, that's amazing, and it's funny because I'm like, man, that's a pretty sweet place to work right now. In
Yeah.
terms of you've got the ozone, you've got all the products. So
Yep.
is that when that finally goes live on your website? I imagine you might sell out pretty quick depending on how much you're making.
Yeah.
Is that like a 10-pack? Is that the shot right there?
Yeah, it is. So that's the shot size. Well, we'll have a glass one, and this is a PET one. Supply chain is a real bear right now. These bottles come from Italy. So I don't know how fast we'll be getting more of those. We'll make these. We have 40,000 of them. We'll sell those out. They'll come in a 12-pack of these shots, but we'll also have an 8-ounce bottle. So for bulk, and that'll have 20 shots in the 8-ounce bottle. So we'll sell both of those. We have glass bottles of these coming in with that'll replace these when they're done. And they should be available in about 3 weeks. And we've had such a run on vitamin C, glutathione, D3K2. And so we're just making that every day and shipping and making more and shipping and running out and making more and shipping. So, you just got to get your orders in and we'll catch up to it within a couple of days.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's funny because before, as I told you, I'm in Luxembourg right now. And before we took off, we stocked up, but we've been taking 500 milligrams of your vitamin C per day, and we've been bumping it to 3 grams. So all of a sudden our 3 or 4 month supply is going to go pretty quick. Yeah, it's going to go fast. Great.
We have a distributor in the Netherlands or in Denmark, in Copenhagen. Life Extension Europe.
That's the website? All right. Well, hey, that's great to know. We've got a lot of listeners out here looking for your products, and I'm going to definitely check them out.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So the Standard American, you basically got us covered with that shot now.
Yep.
And I imagine if folks are listening right now, we're going to try to get this show out fast because we're getting inundated with questions.
Right.
And in the meantime, you've got your vitamin C back in stock. You've got some glutathione, I think, back in stock. So they can piece that shot together.
Yeah, everything's back in stock, and we make it, ship it, make it, ship it, make it, ship it, make it, ship it. There's not even saying out of stock. We're out of stock for a day, and then it's back in. You just keep pushing everything out.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, hey, let's move on to somebody that maybe is in their early or mid 60s. They're in this sort of what we may say like a higher risk category for immune issues at this moment. And you can dive into, if you want, like my mom, who seems healthy, she exercises, but she is in that age bracket. And then maybe if you wanted to dive into somebody in that age category that maybe is overweight or maybe does have diabetes, and if that kind of catapults them into a different category where they may need a whole different type of support.
Yeah. Glutathione is what's going to be the difference. So we'll focus here. All the same things we said there do apply, but the two biggest things here, D absolutely needs to be just high levels. Blood, blood markers the way we do them here. Now I don't remember. I think it's nanograms per deciliter. Over 80. At least over 60. So, and the break where they see these problems become really bad, like when they get lung issues and it just goes out of hand, is either 25 or 30. And so they say below that, supplementing D just does wonders to bring them out of that. And above that, it's not as important. But so that's because you want to keep that. You want to keep those levels really, really high. D does so many things. You know, it's kind of steroidal on one side, controlling inflammation while not being immunosuppressive, but it ties together so many elements of your immune system, your hormone system, and your metabolism. You know, like we've talked about keto before 6, which is a really important thing for especially people if they've got metabolic syndrome or diabetes, you know, trying to get their insulin resistance up. And that's through AMPK activation. But guess what's an awesome AMPK activator? Vitamin D. And there's
Wow.
all this research on vitamin D lowering blood sugar levels and controlling insulin resistance. And so vitamin D really is a one-stop shop, you know, for these complicated cases to bring a lot of those risk factors a little bit more in control. And there's all kinds of research being done around cardiovascular issues and lung issues with vitamin D. And so it is your one-stop shop. Now, what's going down with age, and it's another big aspect of control, is glutathione. And you know, you can be supplementing NAC to bring things up, but if you have any really strong inflammatory processes going on, your synthesis of glutathione from NAC is going to be pretty weak. And so you're going to want to go right to glutathione. Now, glutathione is another thing that's controlling this gas pedal brake thing. And in the cytokines, there's Th1 and Th2, and there's Th17. Th17 is a really wound up inflammatory path. Th2 is more allergic-like immunity, and Th1 is more just kill the damn things and get them out of here. Now, when there's adequate glutathione, you strike the right balance and you have very strong Th1 activity and less of the Th2 and Th17. When glutathione goes down, Th1 goes down, and Th2 and Th17 wind up and get more out of hand. Now, in mouse models of sepsis, where they would take, and this is when an infection gets into the body and winds things up. And in these models, what they did is puncture the intestine, so a little bit of you know, feces spills into the peritoneum and winds up a big inflammatory reaction. Now, if they deplete glutathione before they do this, the reaction goes out of hands, and where does it move to? It moves into the lungs and kills the mouse by drowning them, by bringing all that inflammation into the lungs. When the glutathione levels are kept adequate, the inflammation goes to the site of the puncture and focuses itself around there. So glutathione is big for where do we marshal the resources and how do we balance them. So we've seen D as a balancer, we've seen glutathione as a balancer. Now C and glutathione are also free radical control. As you wind up inflammation, there's a lot of damage. And C is also a big part of just directly for the immune system. And also, you know, it's a big part of collagen synthesis. So it's controlling barrier functions and making stronger barriers. You know, just like when you get scurvy, your gums start bleeding, that barrier starts breaking down. All kinds of barriers start breaking down. So vitamin C is helping keep the barriers up, but so is AMPK activation. AMPK activation is crucial to the tight junction formation. Now, part of all that activity with the AMPK activation, remember the D can get that going, but it's dependent on having adequate NAD levels. And so the NAD gold, this is nicotinamide mononucleotide, I see as a crucial thing for developing the power that you need in the system to keep the barrier function strong, keep the immune system running, keep the detoxification system running. This is energy for all of your systems, so your body's not deciding, oh, what do I support, what do I leave? So total power, bring up the total power with NAD. You need glutathione, you need vitamin D, and you need vitamin C, and really, you know, the A and the K and E are just rounding all that up and keeping the elderberry, keeping the immune system high.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. And we look at the folks that are kind of getting sick. I think the median age of the deaths that have occurred in the recent weeks is about 63. And when we
Yeah.
talked about NAD last time, we talked about how those levels just kind of plummet with age.
Yep.
And so when it comes to reverting to a younger person and everything that goes with it, NAD seems pretty core to that.
Yeah, and the other thing about the people who are dying who are older, they almost all of them have underlying conditions that involve this ACE-ACE2 balance, where the ACE2 is down, and that's responsible for countering the inflammatory reactions. And so these people basically inflame to death. And there's the supplementation with the vitamin D, as well as the A and the C, to keep that system stabilized. Even though that's the way the virus comes in, it's the way it kills you is by further weakening that. And they're seeing over the course of the infection the ACE2 levels even further diminishing.
Hmm.
And so supplementation of that, I see personally as a really core part of keeping the system together when it does get infected.
Yeah, and I know the glutathione that you just held up. So the glutathione we've got in the fridge right now is the complex. Can you tell us about the difference between your straight up glutathione versus the complex?
Yeah, so this is just straight up glutathione, 50 milligrams per pump, 100 milligrams per mil. The glutathione complex is done in a teaspoon, and there's 325 milligrams of glutathione per teaspoon. And then it's got milk thistle and B complex with it. So it just sort of rounds that out a little bit. So the milk thistle can really help with the liver functioning, and the B complex is helping with mitochondria and energy generation, and with a lot of reactions in the liver.
Yeah, cool. And so if somebody is, right now, they're concerned about this and they're suspecting their glutathione system maybe needs some support, should they be on the dose that's on the bottle, or is this another thing that we should be blowing that out of the water and getting 10,000
Yeah,
IU's vitamin
it
D?
says 2 pumps twice daily. Uh, I'd do 3 times that.
Yeah,
6 pumps twice a day. Yeah,
yeah,
and when you're acute, you could do 10 twice a day, 3 times a day.
yeah.
And the other thing that this is doing, and that's one of the glutathione complex was meant to sort of provide more detoxification support.
Mhm.
That's one of the things that glutathione does. So it's got free radical control, it's got detoxification, and it's got immune support. And the B complex and the milk thistle are helping more with the detoxification. And this is one of the things. If we keep our toxin level low, our immune system can work more strongly. There is there's an inverse relationship. As toxins go up, immune integrity goes down. Part of that's because you're wasting out glutathione, but there's a number of different reasons that this happens. One of the things that mercury does, remember, we go back to that gas and brake thing with the
Mhm.
inflammatory response. Mercury has been shown to inhibit the counter-inflammatory response, the anti-inflammatory cytokines. So there's just a pro-inflammatory response, and a
Mhm.
number of the toxins will do that. So if we can lower our toxic burden, we're going to do a lot better. And so we can do that gently with the older people, but it's really when we get to talking about the biohackers are going to be building immune and lowering toxins at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that just kind of leads us to just such an important point that we skipped over a little bit. And that's this idea that while we're on quarantine and we're trying to figure out how to maximize our immune system, the foods that we're eating, the way that we're treating our body, the thoughts that are in our head, there's a lot of things that can even precede any investments we might make in our
Oh,
health. Because I think there's a lot of
yeah,
people
let's
watching
talk about
Netflix with a bag of
stress.
popcorn right now.
I mean, let's talk about stress. There's nothing that depletes your immune system more than stress. So the more you're like wound up, and the more you're suppressing your immune system. And so we've got to be cool during this. And that means we can take CBD, we can take GABA, we can take a little THC if that works for you. But working on self-soothing breathing exercises, deep breathing that brings your immune system under control. There's nothing better to bring your autonomic nervous system under control than deep breathing with gratitude. And so, there is so much to be grateful for, even in these crazy times. And recounting that list will shift you over into that more blissful field that brings your immune system up. And these are also going to bring up sleep. Back when I used to train a lot of Tai Chi, my teacher was doing a PhD, and he was working on balance and sleep as part of Tai Chi and meditation. And these are benefits that come from it. It's also things that come, from GABA and CBD, is to get sleep and get that all to calm down. The stress also winds up the inflammatory side too. It puts you in the sympathetic dominance. And so you stop detoxing and you wind up a lot of pro-inflammatory reactions. So control over our vibe during this time is just so crucial.
100%. And I think that it's an interesting time. And yesterday I just was talking, and I was saying that it's so funny because I push a lot of breathing and humming. I had a podcast with a woman named Lois Laney that was just incredible. And we talked a lot about the benefits of humming for the vagus nerve and just be able to bring you into that moment. But it's funny how everyone loves to say, like, I don't have the time. I got to get the kids to school. I got to get the traffic's bad. I got to get to work by this time.
That's when you should be breathing.
That's when you should be breathing. But now, hey, you've got all the time in the world. We're all just sitting around our house right now.
No, it's totally true. It's funny. I think you'll see a split where some people get fatter from this, some people get skinnier from this, some people get more stressed out, some people get less. This is a time to embrace all those things you didn't have time for. It is the biohacker's home retreat.
That's right. Very cool. All right, cool. So we've got the standard American, we've got the shot to get them covered. And actually one more just kind of anecdotal story. And that's, when we first tested Emilia's vitamin D, it was 30, and she went on immediately. We put her on 10K, 10,000 a day. I can't remember how many pumps that is, but over the course, she was on 10,000 of your stuff. And I imagine 10,000 of your stuff is probably 100,000 of, some kind of like powder or whatever, but it took some time to come up. So it wasn't like, cause I think there's some information out there that people are worried about toxicity of these fat soluble vitamins. And, when we looked, it was like, it took some time. It wasn't overnight that we got her up to the 50 mark or wherever we were headed. And so I just to give people some comfort in terms of these higher levels of nutrients, it's your body it's a system, and it takes some time to really kind of take this in. And especially if you're depleted, I imagine the glutathione system is probably the same. If you've just been, punching this thing, just beating this glutathione system down for a while, it might take quite a while, weeks and weeks of a high dose before you see that start to really ratchet up.
Yeah, it's gonna have to fill into all these empty pockets, and it's gonna have to build the whole system up to where it can really start manifesting these higher living genes. And that's what we see when the body's down. It just has sort of default mechanisms for survival. All of these genes for the highest order of living, they need to see your internal terrain come up to a really high clarity level before they'll invoke these genes that make you really live long and live super clean. And there's a lot of this is in the glutathione system. There's a lot of on-off switches that you actually stick glutathione onto to turn these things off until the terrain is at a high enough level that you can manifest these different genes. And that was the way that Bruce Lipton talked about epigenetics, is that the cell is reading its extracellular environment. Now we know it's reading intracellular and extracellular, communicating between the mitochondria, the endoplasmic reticulum, the Golgi, and the nucleus. And they're deciding, how clean is this ship here, and what can we manifest? And when you're dirty, you don't manifest a lot of, higher living genes. And so this is the time to clean ourselves up and just have that thing running at really, really high levels.
Right. No, makes total sense. And on that note, one of the other products of yours that I consume a lot of are the hydrogen tabs and the quintessential. And I think when it comes to cellular health, hydration, I know it's a big part of your work. And I think touching on that would be huge, because I think that's the stats on dehydration are pretty ridiculous in terms of the level of dehydration that a lot of people are walking around at right now.
The water is the transmission of all this thing. Minerals translating signals through a watery matrix. And so you need a lot of water. You need the cells to be able to bring in water, and that means you need to have the right mineral balance. And so using the ketone quintessential, either the 0.9 or the 3.3. 3.3 is straight seawater. 0.9 is diluted down to plasma level. So the 0.9 helps more signaling through your mouth into opening up for hydration. Now, the 0.9 the 3.3 remineralizes faster, but the 0.9 is really opening up extracellular flow nicer, and it's opening up kidney flow, and enabling the system to take more water in. I mean, either way you take those, the minerals are going to get in, and they'll enable more water to get into the intracellular space. And so that hydration and the electrolyte balance is really crucial. And this is one of the early researches around ketone were with immune building in the early 1900s. Hydrogen is interesting. It's really good for cellular hydration, but it's also a huge part of the inflammatory, counter-inflammatory system. So hydrogen is always holding the center, and really wound up free radicals it quenches, but mild free radicals it doesn't. So it's always bringing to the middle. It's got some AMPK activation, some NRF2 activation, and so it's really good for holding that balance. Because remember, we can't keep ourselves away from all the bugs out there. We want to have the proper response to it. So a lot of these things are bringing your immune system up to, deal with anything that comes in. But when it comes in, then you're going to deal with it in the proper, an appropriate response to it.
Right. Makes sense. And I would love to kind of go back real quick just to the Quinton, the little vials, because I know you take the 3.3 in the morning, you take the 0.9 before bed. I believe this is the prescription. But it's funny because every time I buy those things, I'm like, why would I buy the 0.9 if I can have 3.3?
Yeah. So how does that all work? So there's a lot of signaling that goes on right in the oral cavity. And when you have receptors all through the mouth, and especially in the back of your throat. One of the interesting receptors there is an interferon receptor that when you get mucus going down your throat when you start getting sick, there's interferon secreted by your nose into the mucus, and it drips down over receptors in the throat, and that turns on the immune system. So they've always known, as they've been using ketone, that there's something that's reacting right in the oral cavity, because they make you hold it just like you hold the liposomes, but it's not really because of absorption, it's because of signaling there. And if you have a heart rate variability monitor and you've got that tuned in, when you do the isotonic, you'll see your heart rate variability or your autonomic shift parasympathetic. When you do the high strength, the 3.3, the straight salt water, you'll see your autonomic shift to sympathetic. And so this same thing at two different dilutions is shifting your autonomics two different ways. So if you're trying to signal the body, it's best to use the 0.9. Unless you're trying to wake it up, in the 3.3. If you just want to get minerals in, and you don't want to shift yourself a little sympathetic, put your 3.3 into water and drink it down, and you'll get those minerals in there. But it is really unique how that happens. And anytime you're getting to, you're starting to feel bad, focus on the 0.9, because that's going to open up lymphatic drainage, kidney drainage, hydration, and it's going to do this through signaling that you get just holding it in the mouth and then swallowing it across receptors in your throat.
Super cool. Super
Crazy.
Cool. And I've heard of a lot of people that just inexplicably feel great on the stuff, and especially people that have night cramps. I don't know if you've heard.
Oh yeah, there's a special, the sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium that come in there really work on that. I've known that for a lot of people, but I think there's a very special form of magnesium that's bound by all the phytoplankton exudates, and that's probably the main driver there.
Got it. Cool. All right. So we covered a little bit of hydration here. Anything else for the sort of anything else for my mom who's mid 60s, wants to stay healthy right now? I think another piece is,
Exercise, movement, lymphatics, walking. You gotta walk. You gotta take fresh air. You gotta take sunlight. And one of my favorite esoteric practices is sky gazing, something you can share with everything. I mean, there's sun gazing, but that's really strict how you do that. But
yeah,
sky gazing, just staring into the blue sky, opens up your whole system. And if we get into like electromagnetics, if you can, ground out and have your feet on the ground and look into the sky, this grounds your whole electromagnetic system. And people should worry about EMF hygiene, and they should be turning routers off at night. You should turn your cell phone onto airplane mode at night, and hardwire your computers as much as possible, because this is another stressor at a cellular and immune level. And so clarifying all that, both in the house, but then getting out and doing the sky gazing kind of like resets your whole electromagnetic system.
no, that's great. It's funny. I don't know if I can do it. I got Ethernet right now. So
Good, man.
yeah,
I
everyone thinks
don't.
I'm crazy.
I'm in a business that's all freaking wireless. It's
Yeah.
brutal. At least
Yeah,
these are
man.
plugged in.
That's right. That's right. No, but it's so interesting because I tell a lot of folks to get outside. And I think right now with people being indoors, they think that quarantine means you can't go into your yard or something. But I push people to get outside, get barefoot, get in the sun. But I think this sky gazing is probably the
Yeah.
next level.
No, it really is. The sun gazing can only be done in the first hour, of sun coming up and sun going down. All you got to do is look at it for a couple seconds. It resets everything. But sky gazing is really, really safe, and it works so well to open everything up.
And what's the ideal, like how long should folks be doing this? Just like,
Oh, that's a good question. If you can get like 2 minutes, that would be really good, 1 to 2 minutes. But I mean, you can sit there for 10
2
minutes.
hours?
It's an esoteric meditation
Yeah.
technique, and
Yeah.
eventually you start seeing colors and stuff. It's part of the Terge sequence of Dzogchen. But it has, because I play around with it, and it's, when I'm like in Vegas for a conference for a couple of days and I come do that, oh my God, that just so resets me from everything. So, I've just adapted it into, it's an advancement of grounding.
Right. Right. Cool. One other quick question I had on your vitamin C, because I know with the liposomes, generally you're getting far better absorption.
Yeah.
Now, if we say, take 1,000 milligrams of your vitamin C, or
Right.
2 or 3 grams of your vitamin C, and somebody, listening maybe just says, hey, I'm going to go to GNC and what would be the equivalent? Like how much
Yeah,
powdered
they should
sodium would they have to
probably
take?
be like a 4 to 5x. The
Yeah.
plasma levels are tough with C because and we saw this when we started doing B12 uptake. When
Yeah.
people are deficient, their transporters to bring things into the cell are really upregulated. And liposomes, when they get in intact, have vastly higher uptake into cells because the liposome is able to interact with the cell membrane really well, and the transporter's much more efficient. In a cell culture study around glutathione, they found 100-fold increase in uptake into the cell from a liposome versus regular. So plasma is a little hard to tell. What we see with
Yeah.
plasma is that the C in the liposome gets in immediately and gets to high levels right away. And then you get to these levels where your kidneys are starting to clear it out. And whether depending on then if you take regular C, it can get to those same levels. It just takes a lot longer. But how much is getting into the cell? And that's where we see clinically that people respond to the liposomal C so well. And that's, unless we're doing like autopsies and stuff and biopsies, it's hard to see what the intracellular levels. When we do a CACO2 study, which mimics a GI membrane, we see the liposome uptake is much higher than the regular. So I would 4 to 5x the regular C to get the same amount. Now, regular, C is pretty cheap, but the special aspect of the liposomal C seems to be the cellular availability of it. Then you get into certain things like, curcumin, you've got a 300-fold plasma difference between regular and liposome. With C, it's not so dramatic. Again, it's the dynamics in the body where it gets into.
Right. No, it's just an important point too, because I think if folks go on Amazon and they look at a bag, a kilo of vitamin C powder versus 30 servings of yours, their brain might be going crazy.
Yeah,
Because you gotta take
and
10
I
times
don't want
more.
to. Some people don't have the disposable income to go to these really premium supplements, and that's why I like to throw out those numbers. So if people are just going to track, the cheapest stuff they can, here's some guidances. But those 2 grams of C in the liposome now, at least 5 to 10 grams of C if you're just getting bulk sodium ascorbate.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Another product I just wanted to ask you about real quick is the ultravitamin, because this is something we've been using basically as a prenatal for Amelia.
Oh yeah.
And I think that it's another one of these sort of, call it an insurance policy, call it sort of foundational. It's been something I've been thinking about putting my mom on right now, because I don't.
My
Centrum Silver or something.
mother-in-law lives on that. My mother-in-law in France lives on ultravitamin, the one, NAD, and methyl B12. And her doctor recently was like, yeah, there you go. Her doctor was like, what are you doing? You are so strong. And she has the heart, lung, kidney issues. And she would come here and Mile High City up in Denver, and she couldn't, walk 10 feet. And we put her on all that stuff. She was here for 6 weeks over the holidays. Within 2 weeks, she was walking around the lake twice a day. It's a mile walk.
Wow.
Just by putting her on all that stuff. The first year she was here and we started supplementing her, I mean, she's been coming for years, but then she was getting bad, and then we made ultravitamin. That was the first thing we gave her that really picked her up. And then we added the one that really did it. And then when the NAD came in, she was just like a totally different person. And her swelling went down. Like the whole system was just running so well. Because she's in France and she's vastly at risk. She has all those issues. And before I understood all the D3K2, my wife Nadine dosed her up hard with D3K2, and she felt freaking great from it. Now I see, she had these kidney problems, the swelling, the hypertension, and it worked on that renin-angiotensin system and just like really helped balance her out. So the ultravitamin has all that. It has D3K2, has vitamin A at 10,000 IUs, plus it's got 3-4 different carotenoids, zeaxanthin, lutein, lycopene, and beta-caryophyllene. And then it's got mixed tocopherols, it's got tocotrienols, it's got the B complex, it's got the C, it's got everything. And so, there you'd want to do like 2 of those a day. If you want to use that for dry, I would do like 2 of those plus some extra vitamin C. That's one solution for getting all those different vitamins.
Super cool. Super cool. And just because you mentioned that she lives in France, it's interesting. I've been now in Luxembourg for about a week, and I'm sitting here and I've got Germany over here. I've got France below me. I got Brussels up here, and I'm learning about the food kind of world here as I try to scour this place for the best grass-fed beef and everything else. And I was learning about this, the food quality in France is just crazy. And there's been this push to basically streamline, quote, organic, or, giving stamps of approval to different foods. And it's funny because over in Germany, I've learned, like, don't eat meat from Germany. They don't have very good standards. And then you look at France, and it's funny because countries like Germany that maybe the quality is a little bit down, they're really pushing for these stamps of approval. And countries like France, where the quality is here, they're like, we would actually reduce our quality to get there.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting.
No, they'll work against that. Their BO stamp for organic is very high end. They're very traditional. They really, even though on one hand, they've become pharmaceutical junkies, they like a lot of drugs. In their food, the food has to be pure, pure, pure. They sued somebody once for changing one of the traditional recipes. It's like the Ministry of Food came and sued this guy for changing the pan banya recipe or something. And so their quality is exceptional.
Yeah, this grass-fed butter I got from France, and it doesn't
Yeah,
say grass-fed anywhere. Speaking of
doesn't
vitamin
need to.
A, right? It
Yeah,
is you put this in your mouth, and it's just your whole system just lights up. It's like, yo, that
yeah.
didn't happen with.
That's probably coming from Normandy. They do the best butter. The
Yeah, well, I think that's part
Northwest.
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wild. All right, cool. Now, one other thing I wanted to ask about with this sort of, whether it's the standard American or whether it's the 65-year-old, I think gut issues are pretty prevalent in this population. And you mentioned a little bit about poking a hole in the intestines with the
Yeah.
mice. And in terms of people with gut issues that may be kind of consuming a lot of their immune resources, whether it's products or practices for these folks that, they're going to get the shot, they're going to get the D, they're going to get the C, they're going to get the glutathione. Is there anything else that we can do to kind of
Yeah.
help?
I mean, they really have to take time to heal their gut at this time, and probiotics are part of that. But and the best thing for healing your gut is don't freaking eat. Fasting, because it's
Oh,
AMPK activation and NAD that are repairing the digestions,
right.
and so going more keto and
Mhm.
especially fasting more calms. At first it seals up the tight junctions, and then it calms down the immune reactivity. Now in the supplements, you've got our keto b46, you've got dim works really nicely to calm down intestinal and liver hyper reaction to immune stuff. And then one of the things that's getting in the leaky gut is endotoxin. And Ultra Binder or just charcoal is really good for binding up endotoxin in the GI, so that's not getting in and winding up inflammation. And if you do get sick and you have a lot of high cytokine levels and you're feeling really inflamed, charcoal's actually good at binding cytokines. They must release in the bile and reabsorb. And I had a study on a cerebral malaria model in a mouse. Well, they gave mice cerebral malaria, and if they give them charcoal at the same time, that mopped up some of that cytokine storm, and they lived longer. And so charcoal is ameliorative too, or palliative to that high inflammatory cycle. One by binding cytokines, and two by binding endotoxin.
Interesting. So, because obviously I've done quite a few push catches in my
Yeah.
day, but you can just take the charcoal by itself.
Yeah, you can take it just by itself. Now, if we get into, if we take that as the move into the biohacker guy. So what does the biohacker guy want to do?
Right.
Well, he's going to want to lower his toxin levels. So he should do our push catch or something like that, where it's going to wind up detox, couple it to bioflow, and with the liver sauce, and then bind with the binder. And in between taking the liver sauce and the binder, you should be doing infrared sauna or ionic foot baths, any of the different things that people get into to speed up their detox.
Yeah, man. Hey, that's my protocol. I basically take the push, then I get in my solo unit.
Yep.
I've got the sunlight and it's like a little
Yeah.
like tanning bed. And
Yeah.
then I pop out and that's exactly what I do.
Yep. Yep.
Cool, man.
And then red light is going to keep your mitochondria strong, which is going to keep your immune system strong. There's a lot of different tools. You've got the breathing, you got heart rate variability control to keep your autonomics good. Do not overtrain. That is, if you're more on that like Ironman triathlete side, exercise. Do not over exercise, because that'll lower your immunity.
Cool, man. And one thing on push catch, because I know if folks decide to do this, I've taken quite a few people through this detox, and I feel like there's a pretty big spectrum of responsiveness to
Yeah.
this detox. So in other
Yeah.
words, some people are highly sensitive
Yeah.
to the protocol, and other people, it seems like they could chug
Triple
a
dose.
bottle, yeah, triple dose,
Yep.
take it every couple hours. So if somebody's new to push catch, because I'm a big believer in
Yeah.
this that I do it every
Great
couple of
system.
months. And they maybe take the first dose of push and have some sort of negative response, whether it's bathroom trip, whether it's some kind of stomach. What is that kind of telling them, and what should they do about that? Because I've seen this in a few people.
Well, that means that trigger was waiting to be pulled, and that
Right.
stuff was waiting to dump. And you can pull back to a half dose,
Hmm.
and then do the binder. Usually, what you're going to do is lower liver sauce and increase binder. So
Okay.
more binding, less mobilization is what those people do. So cut liver sauce in half, but keep the binder up higher. More binder is the balm of Gilead and all that. Some people, when they still have amalgams, are a little sensitive to the
Hmm.
lipoic acid, and you can do a modified version of that that is bitters and PC with binder.
Oh, interesting. So you take
Yeah.
in place of the push, you would just take bitters
Yeah, your
nine or
push is
whatever.
bitters and PC, and you can have glutathione there. You're just taking the lipoic acid out of the deal. Liver sauce is bitter X, PC, histoaid, and then added milk thistle and lipoic acid.
Very cool.
So
Very cool.
you can take any combination of things there.
Interesting. And anecdotally, the people that I've seen that have had the most negative response, and really the only negative responses, they either use conventional deodorants
Oh,
because they say otherwise I get BO or whatever the case may be. Maybe they dye their hair. There's some kind of like
toxic load.
regular chemical insurgence happening.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's like the ultimate proof that this thing is working.
Yeah, yeah, and if they got a lot of BO, there's probably internal toxicity as well. Yeah,
Interesting. Let's go on about the BO.
yeah.
Cool. So tested positive. Hey, all right. So we got the biohacker guy, and he's going to do the push catch. He's going to do a couple other things. What else, Chris? Is there anything else that we didn't touch on? We touched on hydration. We got vitamin C,
No, we
multivitamin.
touched on a lot of stuff. Again, keeping the power up with the NAD. Then the more aggressive things, which are microbial balancing, is like what we like to say. We've got microbe manager, Biocidin LSF, and artemisinin emulsion. And these are more, when you're starting to feel crappy, going in and really trying to, wipe out the terrain. And in these products, I mean, this is a new generation of these products. You've got things that are known for microbial balancing, like artemisinin, andrographis, berberine, propolis. And then you've got inflammatory modulators, CBD, curcumin, and boswellia, and mast cell stabilizer, quercetin.
Mm,
And that's so that you can clear some stuff out and control the body's inflammatory response to it at the same time.
very cool. And that product there, the micro manager, that's the first time I've seen you make a capsule. First
Yeah,
time I've
yeah,
seen
this
you
is
make a
cool.
pill.
This is a soft gel, and this is called a self-emulsifying delivery system. So if I cracked this open and squeezed it into water and then shook it up, it would turn into a transparent yellow solution, the yellow from the curcumin and the quercetin. But it breaks down into nanos in the water in your stomach.
Very cool. Very
Yeah,
cool. All right, Chris. I think that's cool, man. I think we covered pretty well, right? So we got the
yeah, we
standard
did.
American.
Yeah,
Hang on for this shot that's going to be
yeah.
available in a couple of weeks.
Control stress, get grounded, control EMF, a little sky gazing.
Yeah, man. And actually, the EMF, I just think it's something that we suspect maybe this is going to be the smoking of our generation, right? Like I can't believe we put our
Yeah, like
phone in
that
our
whole
pocket.
5G, there's a lot of fear that the 5G drove the virulence in this. And it definitely, the EMF mechanisms they're also winding up inflammation. Martin Paul's work showed their damage to the voltage gated calcium channels. And those are supposed to be keeping calcium out of the cell. So magnesium in, calcium out. And these are damaged by the EMF rays, and calcium starts running into the cell and winding up inflammation. And what do you use to fix that? NAD.
Hmm.
And so you're consuming NAD, and that's lowering your NAD resources and all the mitochondrial problems around that. And so NAD and all the things in Keto B46 are protective against this EMF damage.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. And it's so easy, right? Just like unplug your router at night, you
Yeah.
know,
It's just,
it's,
yeah, it's just wireless hygiene.
yeah. And it's so easy too. I mean, I got the Ethernet cable on Amazon for $4. I
Yeah.
run it right to the
Right to the
router
wall.
and then
Yeah.
just go on the IP address thing and just switch off Wi-Fi, man. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like if you're just sitting around your house right now, you might as well wire this thing up because it's super easy and it saves.
Yep.
You don't even know what benefit you're giving yourself, and
Yeah.
that's low hanging fruit.
Yep.
Cool. All right, and then mom's got to eat clean. She's got to maybe consider keto before 6. Definitely pump up the glutathione.
Yep.
And the biohacker guy is going to kind of layer in a little extra detox.
Yeah.
So maybe a
Yeah, you
push
got it.
patch, maybe a little extra infrared sauna. And I think
Yep.
the not over exercising is a big piece here, because I think it's interesting. It's like right now, at least when I look out, it's like, you see people running. It's like, where were these people? Where were these people before
I know.
quarantine?
Yeah. And, some exercise is good, but a
Yeah.
lot is bad. There's a woman who works here for me and went and did an ultra marathon, and there's some ridiculous, like 2 in 2 weeks or something, or 3 marathons in 2 weeks, and ended up with a viral infection so deep it wiped her out for like 2 weeks. And it was like, well, saw that one coming. And
Right.
this was a couple of months ago.
Right.
But that's what you get from that. Whenever cortisol's up, immunity's down, and that shit sails right in there.
Yeah. All right, Chris. Well, hey man,
All
thank
right.
you so much, Dr. Shade.
Welcome.
Great episode 2. We're gonna get this up pretty darn quick here, so I appreciate you joining me.
Great.
And everyone knows where to find you. It's your second time on the show. We're gonna link in the show notes to all the products and things that we chatted about, and we will absolutely look forward to that shot being released, because that thing seems like quite the insurance policy for people.
Oh
right now.
yeah. Yeah, I'm loving it. All right.
All right, man.
Take care,
All
Joe.
right, take care, Chris.
Bye-bye.
Bye.